Welcome to the WuBlockchain podcast for the latest insights in blockchain and crypto. Don't forget to subscribe to WuBlockchain on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. Stay informed and join the conversation. Today, we are excited to have Art Abal, Managing Director of Vana Foundation and co-founder of Vana Protocol, joining us. Vana has been gaining attention for its innovative approach to data liquidity in Web3. Let's dive in. Art, could you start by introducing yourself and the Vana project?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Art. And yes, I'm the managing director of the Vana Foundation and co-founder of the Vana Protocol. So why does Vana exist? Vana exists to address a critical problem in the development of AI. It's the need for data. Public data is almost completely exhausted. It's already been scraped and used in many of today's models. And this is a problem because data is like oil for AI and it powers everything. And AI and the companies developing it are constantly seeking new data. So where is this data? Well, only a small percentage of data is actually public. The rest of the data is private. And it exists behind paywalls or stored in databases that cannot be accessed by crawlers and scrapers. And one way to access this data is directly from users. In Web2, this practice is known as data farming or field collection, where a central company or a platform collects data from individuals and then packages it and sells it. In Web3, however, we can accomplish the same thing with tokens, protocols, and data DAOs. And what this does is it enables individuals to benefit from the immense value and power that their data creates. So what we're doing at Vana is we're really liberating the data marketplace, allowing people like you and me to benefit from the upside of their data, while also unlocking immense possibilities for AI by providing it with a new set of data for training. I personally come from a background in human field research and data sourcing. I worked at Appen, one of the world's largest data brokers, sourcing data that supported major AI models like ChatGPT and powered platforms like Google Search and Google Ads. So my experience has been in this data marketplace and some of the challenges with traditional centralized systems I've experienced directly. My co-founder, Anna, launched her first AI company through Y Combinator and later became one of the founding engineers at Celo, a mobile first layer 1 blockchain. And so her expertise is really AI and blockchain. And the genesis story of Vana is that Anna and I met while studying at MIT. She was at MIT and I was studying at Harvard. And we were in a class focused on addressing emerging tech challenges. And we identified that a major issue in AI is the need for high quality data, and also identified that there is a way in which individuals can participate in this new AI ecosystem, this new AI marketplace, by letting people own their own data. And so that's me, and that's how Vana kind of came about.
And Vana attracted investment from Paradigm, which typically invests in projects with high growth potential. Could you walk us through how this partnership came to be?
Yes. I get this question asked a lot. I think a lot of people are curious about how Paradigm decides to invest. I will say that this is just my personal opinion. I obviously can't speak for our investors and partners because I'm sure they'll have their own opinions. But from my experience, Paradigm and some of the investors like Paradigm seem to look for three key qualities in projects. The first one is a big system changing idea. Paradigm is drawn to projects with transformative potential, not just incremental improvements or trendy concepts. They're interested in deep tech that redefines how humans can do things at scale. The second thing they look for is founders that are uniquely suited to execute that vision. So anyone can have an idea, but what Paradigm really asks is, why you? This is a question that they ask founders constantly. So what is it about your background, your skills, or your experience that makes you and your team the right people to bring this vision to life? And so Anna and I had to talk about why we came to this problem, why it was a natural progression of what we had been doing, and why we were the best suited people to solve this problem. And the third thing that Paradigm really looks for, some of these investors I believe look for, is ingenuity. So smart, adaptive problem solving. I think because building a startup, you're constantly racing to be ahead of the curve. And the only way to really get there is to be able to hack and find ways to beat the trend. So Paradigm really valued the fact that Anna and I are relentless innovators, constantly searching for that edge, constantly looking to stay ahead of the pack. And that's one of the key qualities that was really interesting to them.
Are there specific qualities or metrics Vana emphasized that were instrumental in securing Paradigm's interest?
Yeah, I would say it's those similar three things. So the things that were really instrumental for us was the fact that Anna and I had the background in both AI, data, and crypto. We weren't just coming to this fresh. We had understood a real world problem that exists in Web 2, which is data availability and a lack of user ownership. And we were prepared to implement foundational technology to really solve that problem. So I think they were really interested in the vision, but also very interested in the positioning that Anna and I were the right people to be solving this problem for society and for them.
So from your perspective, what specific aspects of Vana convince Paradigm of the project's potential in Web3 and AI?
Yes, I think the one thing that was very important for them was that we were presenting a problem that existed for which blockchain was a sensible solution. I know that there is a tendency to apply Web3 to a problem that doesn't really exist sometimes. And this is not that. The biggest problem with data is that my data on its own is not as valuable as my data when aggregated with a lot of people. That's what gives these Web2 platforms so much power. They have central power to be able to centralize this data, and then they can monetize and sell it. In a community setting, we need something else to bring that centralization process in. And that's the Vana ecosystem. That's the Vana chain. And so what was really exciting for a lot of the folks that we partner with on our cap table, any investors, and also in our community, is that Vana provides a really sensible use case for a real problem that exists and provides a sensible way for crypto to be applied to that problem to address the aggregation issue as it relates to data and to allow that data to be financialized collectively versus in a centralized way.
Oh, so the Paradigm offer any strategic support beyond funding, such as mentorship, market insights that's helping Vana in its scaling process?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I think it's very, very important for early stage founders to make sure they're partnering with investors that are aligned. I would say that Anna and I have been very fortunate to interact with investors that are formally partnered with us, as well as folks that we know in our investor network that have helped us with a range of things that are important. If I could identify maybe the top three things that I think it's really important that investors have been able to bring to us, the first one is connections, like network. An investor network is incredibly valuable because they allow you to be able to leverage partnerships as well as recruiting and various things associated with that. Number two is just thought leadership. Investors tend to be very ahead of the curve as it relates to trends, trends in AI, trends in crypto, trends in the data space. And so we were able to have access to Paradigm's insight and intelligence as it relates to trends. And that's really helped us to make sure that we are deploying our resources in the best way possible. And I think the third thing is just the recognition that comes from having gone through a process with a top tier VC is a really strong signal in the market that you're offering something that is incredibly important and potentially industry changing. It's not an easy process to go through to have to work through diligence from one of these top investors. I think if anybody's raised money, you kind of know that it's really quite challenging. But I think particularly with folks at Paradigm and some of the other top tiers, you need to really be able to point to some foundational technology and foundational change. And to go through that process sends a market signal out there that you're A, willing to do so, and B, that you're able to really execute on a vision that some of the top industry thinkers think is valuable.
Mm-hmm. Recently, a16z partner Justin Moore mentioned Vana as the only Web3 project in her article on building the AI brand. Although a16z isn't Vana's investor, have you had any private interactions or discussions with them?
I mean, yes, I think it's the investor networks in the United States are fairly small, especially amongst some of the top tier crypto investors. So we know the A16Z team very well. Although they haven't directly invested in Vana, we've gotten a lot of indirect and informal support from those folks, a lot of great connections from some of their wonderful team, Justine, Chris, Ariana. They've been fantastic to me and Anna, and I really do appreciate having them as folks that back our mission and our goals. Ultimately, I think that the reason why they have been so helpful to us has been that we are all aligned in trying to drive Web3 forward. We want to make it more accessible, and we want to make sure that Web3 makes sense for real problems. And so I think what we have been able to showcase to not just A16Z, but hopefully to the broader crypto community is that we're not a solution looking for a problem. There is a real problem here, and blockchain is the solution, and it could be incredibly transformative to the sector.
Given the competitive nature of Web3 and data-driven projects, how does Vana differentiate itself to attract both institutional investors like Paradigm and potential new backers?
Yeah, I think that that's a really good question. The important thing about Vana is we need to make it, well, the important thing about any Web3 project is you need to make it digestible. You need to make it relatable to everyone. And I think because Web3, we're all digital, we all create data every day. The vision of that data being used without your consent, without you getting any financial upside, that doesn't just relate to, a big VC that understands kind of how the ecosystem is going to evolve in an AI economy. It relates to the everyday person that I speak to on the street. When I take an Uber or when I'm, at the airport in the lounge talking to someone, in the gate lounge talking to someone, and they ask me what I do, I tell them about data and how the value of their data isn't being fully realized, and they get it. So I think one thing that's really been beneficial for Vana and one thing that's helped us to stand out is that we have a message about data as it relates to a broad ecosystem change, the fact that data underpins all of AI. And then we also have a message about data being relatable to the individual. So the fact that your data is something that creates value for someone else and you're not involved in that transaction, and people really listen to that. So I think it's about being able to tell two stories around the same issue of data fueling AI that has helped us to be able to relate to investors, community members, as well as new people who are interested in our project. Ultimately, the core message here is that by users owning their data, by using blockchain to aggregate it, we're putting the power back into the user's hands while also fueling some amazing things that we can do with AI in the future.
That's cool. As we see interest shifting away from VC-backed tokens toward meme coins, even some projects backed by Paradigm have also faced controversy following their TG. What's your take on this trend? Given recent controversies surrounding some VC coins, what should projects consider to avoid such pitfalls?
Yeah, look, I completely understand this sentiment. It's often easier and sometimes it's a lot more fun to speculate on meme coins. I guess I'll approach this from a couple of perspectives. So the first one is how to pick a good investment that's not a meme coin. And then the second one, I'll talk about how data DAOs could be classified as the new meme coin, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So the first piece, like how projects position themselves as a strong investable project. This is an investment advice. I just want to let your listeners, users know that I shouldn't be giving out investment advice. This is just my personal perspective. But personally, I follow three key rules of thumb when looking at projects for legitimacy. One, is it a purposeful use of blockchain? Does their use case make sense given the technology that they're trying to employ? If the functionality or what they're trying to solve could actually be better solved through a centralized mechanism, or through a different way, maybe not on chain, maybe on chain, a different way, then I'm less bullish on the project, because it's typically a solution looking for a problem as opposed to a problem in which the solution is blockchain technology. Some people say that I'm a blockchain maxi, and that's I will wholeheartedly admit that I am one. The second thing is to look very closely. So I think the criticism around VC-backed tokens is warranted, and so I would tell people to go and look back closely at the cap table. Check to see what was invested, by whom, under what terms. And you want to really look for some investors that you know are patient, and that really develop and incubate deep tech, folks like Paradigm, or user-faced backers that have a real mission, folks like Coinbase, both of whom are partners with Vana. For us, choosing aligned investors is really intentional. And I think for early projects, sometimes they don't have the ability to do that. I would say it's really critical for your community that you really choose who you partner with. I don't see investment as taking money from someone. I actually see investors as folks that you really partner with to help you grow and to help realize your vision. And so it's really important to think critically about what those investors signal to the community, because ultimately the community is the reason why your project exists. And I say that the third thing is probably knowing the founders. Mm-hmm. So I think being a founder, it's really important that you're out there talking to people and giving people the opportunity to know you. So I'll always try to attend an event and try to speak to people who are interested in not just investing in the token, but also using our products. We really strive to connect with our community, even when language and cultural barriers exist. And I do hope that dedication shows, but those are really my three things. The other thing that I'll just say, and I'll close on this, is that some suggest that the Data DAO tokens that are being developed on Vana are the new meme coin. It's an opportunity to speculate on a data set in a way that you would speculate on a cultural movement or a meme. So one could say, like, I really think that 23andMe's data set is really valuable. I want to speculate on that token. Or, oh, I really think WeChat data could be really powerful. I want to speculate on that token. So I think if folks are really interested in this kind of mimetic drive to invest, take a look at some of the data coins that we'll be launching on Vana when we launch our mainnet, because that could be a really exciting way to get involved in these data DAOs early on.
Mm-hmm. Given that Vana's data model is relatively novel, how are you building trust with potential data contributors and also the communities?
Yes, I think it's really important that we have technological trust. So I think the piece here that is often overlooked is the deep technology that underpins the Vana ecosystem. I will say that when people think, oh, we need to bring data together, they think it's an easy problem. But I personally know that it's a very challenging problem, because I worked in a Web2 company that had to try to do it, and it's very challenging. So in order to really build trust with the community, you have to present them with technology that really works for them. So we have three elements of that technology. The first is proof of contribution. So the fact that when you contribute your data, the data DAO will define what categorizes that data as good or not good, or high quality or low quality, and that you know that that proof is going to be applied to everyone in a universal way. You know that then you can trust the system. The second thing is making sure that the data, when you contribute it, can be verified in a trustless environment. So we have a trusted execution environment that validates the data. That's also very important, because as a user, your data is very precious. And the last thing that you want is for that data to be leaked while it's being checked. So making sure that that checking process is really private and preserved is very, very important. And the third thing is like a patent that we developed in 2023, which allows users to permission their data at a granular level using their wallets. So just like you're able to permission tokens and transact with tokens, Vana created some intellectual property that allows you to do this now with your data by putting your data on chain. And that's really powerful. It's the same reason why people in crypto are, transmitting in USDC or USDT for transactions, because they can trust that they're the ones who will send it and that the recipient will receive it. You can do the same now with data because of these patents that Vana holds. So I think focusing in on the technology, but also communicating that technology to our community is very important for Vana. And that's how we kind of try to create trust at the technology level. The last thing that I'll say to that is these kinds of conversations are really valuable. I think being a real person, talking about real problems, and being available to the community really helps to bring trust into those communities. And we're going to continue to work at these kinds of things to build more trust within our community.
Mhm. It seems Vana's foundation lies in its data liquidity network, particularly the data liquidity pools, DLPs, and data DAOs. Could you explain how these components operate together? Also, how many data DAOs has been built, and can they be categorized?
Yes, of course. Yes, very exciting. Let me answer that last question first. So since launching the testnet in June, Vana has spun up over 300 data DAOs. Sorry, not Vana has spun up. People have spun up on the Vana network 300 data DAOs, which is fantastic. This is a missionless network, so anybody can spin up data DAOs. Go to build.vana.org because that will give you instructions on how you can spin one up. And these are just people who've thought, oh, I think Twitter could be a valuable data source. So they've created this data DAO and people can contribute to their data DAO, which is awesome. There are 16 in development, in incubation. These 16 will be launching with us when we launch our mainnet. And I would say that the DAOs are categorized into some key areas that are still emerging, but the ones that I would say are kind of health data and longevity. And that includes things like genomic sequencing, mental health data, fitness tracker data. Then you have Web2 social media data. So that would be things like the LinkedIn data DAO, the Reddit data DAO, Scroll DAO, which is integrating Instagram data. And then there's like specialized and financial data. So there's actually two datas that are doing kind of financial forecasting data, which helps with prediction markets. And so there are these kinds of more professionalized use cases. But I think that we'll actually see the emergence of new categories as people start to realize the power of these data DAOs. You mentioned they're talking about like data liquidity and data DAOs and how they work. So let me just kind of dive into that a little bit quickly for you all. So data liquidity pools, they're a main feature of the Vana ecosystem. And users contribute their data in exchange for tokens, which creates what we call data liquidity. Each data DAO or each data liquidity pool is dedicated to a specific type of data. And as more data flows into the network, the utility for individuals and developers grow because of the amount of data that is in the system. And we call this data network effects. It has a compounding effect also for the individual because the more data that an individual has stored on themselves, the easier it is to take it throughout the ecosystem. And so this would unlock new ways for applications to be built on Vana as well. Data DAOs kind of sit and incubate these data liquidity pools. So they're the governance layer that allows these data liquidity pools to operate in that trustless manner. So when you contribute your data into a data liquidity pool, you're able to know that the DAO is how you govern that data so you don't lose full control of it. You're part of a community that controls this data set together. And we've seen that with the Reddit data DAO where the community has voted in order to allow that data to flow to different people who want to use it. And they've, I think, just passed a resolution for a data sale. So the data DAO helps to govern the data set so that everyone has a voice and has a say in the data. I hope that answered your question.
So what makes Vana's data liquidity pools distinct from data markets in other Web3 projects? And how do data DAOs manage governance and quality control within their specific data pools?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think what makes Vana's data DAOs different is, well, let me actually just take a step back here and say that I think the most important thing when you're building a Web3 data marketplace is to make sure it's accessible to Web2 AI, because otherwise there's really no way for that data to be useful. In the Vana team, we have about 20 years of experience in AI data sourcing and sales with Web2 companies. So we're very well positioned to be able to understand what the needs are for those AI data consumers and to make sure that our data DAOs are well positioned to be able to serve those needs. I think one really clear point of distinction is that Vana provides the incentive layer, the ecosystem, to facilitate the marketplace. There are actually several ecosystem companies that create the actual buy and sell side of those marketplaces. So one of them is called TensorSource. They take in Web2 demand and they're able to use the data DAOs to satisfy that Web2 demand and commercialize the data on behalf of the data DAOs. Another one that we partnered with is Super Protocol. They're a great protocol and they provide an end-to-end trusted execution environment service so that the data can be used in multiple computations and then used to produce a model. So in both instances, Vana is simply creating the incubation environment for data marketplaces to spin up, where they can connect with data DAOs and they can also connect with data demand and try to bring those two things together. So I think that's the real differentiator. We're not here trying to say like data supply, data demand. We're here to facilitate those interactions with a protocol that's able to do so in a trustless environment. You mentioned their quality, and I think that's super important. And so I mentioned proof of contribution, which is this idea that your data needs to be checked in accordance with the standards set by the DAO. But one question that I always get asked is, well, if the DAO can set their standards, like why don't they just set a really low standard? And I think that this is why Vana's innovation here is also creating dataset-specific tokens. So if you think about this for a moment with me, if each dataset has its own token, then there's a strong economic incentive for the asset underlying that token, the dataset, to be of high quality. Why? Because somebody can come in and actually create the exact same dataset except higher quality. And if you're a buyer or if you're a buyer's agent, you would not want to go with the low quality data set. You would want to go with the high quality data set. So data DAOs are therefore incentivized to create a high proof of contribution, but also balance that out with making sure that their data set is accessible so they have data contributors and to create the best terms for users. So this competitive environment is really what drives the innovation in the data sets and what also drives quality. I'll give you the example of Twitter data DAOs. There's, I think, about 9 of them that have spun up on our ecosystem. And the one that has the best data is going to be the one that wins. And so therefore, it will be the economic incentives that will drive data quality. The other thing that we do at Vana is we have a DLP, a data liquidity pool rewards program, which recognizes the top 16 contributors in the data DAOs, where our community is able to use the Vana token to be able to vote and stake in the highest quality data DAOs that they believe are bringing good quality data. So community governance also helps to make sure that those data sets are of high quality and bringing great data onto the Vana network.
Vana converts user data into tradable assets. How does it ensure the quality of the data? And what role does the token play in this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think the quality of the data is really based on those factors that I mentioned there. So the dataset specific token, creating incentives for that data to be high quality. And then also the DLP rewards, creating a way for the community to say, like, I like this data set, they're doing good things. I don't like this data set, they're not doing good things. But beyond that, I think it's really, it's this economic incentive mechanic that makes sure that the data is high quality, rather than trying to enforce it through a strict function. I will say that we had contemplated like creating a standardized function of data quality. However, that's really hard to apply because data is very different. So like WhatsApp data is very different from Instagram data, which is also very different from video data from YouTube. So creating these benchmarks of data quality should actually be done at the data DAO level by those communities. And then competition between these communities really drives the quality of that checking mechanism. So that's how we think about quality. In terms of the role of the Vana token, so just like Ethereum, the Vana token powers all data transactions across the ecosystem. But it also supports governance, as I mentioned, through DLP rewards. Token holders can stake in high-performing data DAOs, helping them succeed in the rewards program. And the staking not only secures the data network, but ensures the continuous flow of data quality and keeping the ecosystem valuable and community driven. So you can think of the Vana token as having utility in gas fees, as well as to help govern these data sets, which are really important to our ecosystem.
Could you discuss the growth potential for these tokens, especially as they offer speculative value backed by actual data sets?
Yeah, I would say if we're talking about the dataset specific token, one of the dynamics that we really saw was that data speculators could come in and say, I think this data set has value. I'm going to buy up a lot of the tokens, so token price goes up. And we saw that with the Reddit Data DAO. I think within a few days, the market cap of the Reddit Data DAO governance token was significantly high. It was something on the order of, I believe, like 30 million market cap. But I think that that was probably one extreme example. I would say that in an ideal world, what would happen is people would be able to sell into that market. So when I say sell, like sell their data into the market. So as an individual user, I might say like, okay, well, I'm willing to contribute my Facebook data. And then someone would be able to come in who understands the AI components of this, who understands the value of that data, who could see it and say, hey, I think that's really valuable. I'm going to buy that token. And this kind of buy and sell and trade exchange really helps people to create kind of economic equilibrium where that transaction exists. And so it really connects the buyers and the sellers. So I would say that speculation on the dataset specific token is a critical part of the Vana ecosystem. And that's the thing that will really drive, I think, adoption as well as innovation. Because if you've invested in the speculative value of the dataset, you're invested in making sure it's commercializable and usable in AI. And so that's why the folks who will end up holding these dataset specific tokens will be the ones that are most invested in those datasets.
So can you explain how Vana secures user data and ensures privacy throughout the process?
Of course, yeah, really critical for a lot of users. So Vana ensures data quality through a combination of technology, privacy-preserving validation, and some incentive structures. Ultimately, we're trying to create a trustless environment where data can be verified and aggregated without compromising user privacy and without compromising the data itself. So I'll just go into each of those areas quickly. So trustless validation is really important. Vana validates data through what I mentioned before, a secure data ingress, and a network of trusted execution nodes. So there's TEEs to check the data against the proof of contribution, the predefined guidelines set by the data DAO. And why this is important is because when I contribute my data to a data DAO, I don't want them to have access to the data in order to validate it, because that access to the data is exactly the commercial incentive for me to contribute. So therefore, it goes into the trusted execution environment, and the trusted execution environment is able to issue a zero-knowledge proof to the data DAO saying, yes, this data is valid in accordance with your predefined guidelines. Please award the token to this person in this amount. So that's a really important piece of the network. The second piece, which I also mentioned, was granular permissioning. So that's the idea that you can use your data like you use your wallet, and you can transact with your data and be able to transact with it without a third party intervening. And that's really important for user ownership and user control of data. And the third thing, which is really important, is data provenance. So by putting data on chain, you're able to see how and when it's used in its entirety of life. And so by putting data on the Vana chain and allowing operations to be conducted on the data, you will be able to see how it's used in this model or this agent. And then theoretically, if you've required these terms, be able to get some upside from any technology that your data has contributed to. And so that's really important for us, because I think in the Web2 world, you kind of release your data out into the ether, and then you just assume that the data is just there and it's disappeared. In Web3 world, we'll actually be able to see how your data is used and in what applications, which is going to be really powerful for some to create that kind of trusted environment through security and privacy of user data.
Vana launched the Vana Data Hero bot on Telegram for user interaction. What made Telegram the ideal launch platform? And what other interaction methods will be available for users in the future?
Good question. We always get asked this question about Telegram. Ultimately, we chose it because it's familiar. It's an accessible platform where our community already exists. Data is something that everyone has, and we wanted to make it feel easy to onboard and for people to get involved. And the response has been incredible. We're already planning further platform features for deeper engagement after our mainnet launch. In the future, we'll also provide additional interaction methods. So a bit of alpha for your community is that there are 3 key touch points that I will be focusing in on once we launch on mainnet. The first one is a data hub, a central platform for users to discover new data DAOs, to be able to trade data DAO tokens for Vana tokens, to stake Vana in the top data DAOs and earn rewards from that. And where users will be able to see their participation over time and get rewarded for ongoing network participation. So that's like the user hub, which we call the data hub. We will also have the builder hub, a resource for data DAOs and data applications that want to build on Vana, and a community that will drive that. There'll be bounties available for people who want to build and contribute to projects in the builder hub. And then the third place is community touch points. So we've obviously got our Telegram, we've got our Discord, our Twitter, online events, and IRL gatherings. We'll continue to actively reward initiative in our community, so please get involved in that if you're interested in Discord, Telegram, Twitter. The main interaction, though, on the Vana ecosystem actually happens in the data DAOs. And so visit the data DAOs is what I would recommend to the folks listening. Go to the Vana Telegram mini app because we have all of the data DAOs listed there, and really explore and experiment with these data DAOs. Some of them are live, and they're collecting data in testnet. Some of them are looking at doing pre-mines, so allowing you to reserve spots. There are limited spots in the data DAOs. So I encourage people to go and participate in at least 4 of these data DAOs pre-launch. And spots are limited, so I recommend doing it now. Do it fast.
Mm-hmm. So looking ahead, what does the roadmap look like for Vana? Are there specific plans for a mainnet launch or a timeline for the TG that you can share with us?
Yes, this is the question that everyone was always waiting for. So we are hard at work preparing for mainnet launch. Details are coming very, very soon, like in the coming weeks, very soon. For regulatory reasons, I can't share too much, but I do encourage everyone here to join our Twitter and Discord because that's where you will be the first to know the news. I'm sorry I can't say too much, but just know that I'm very excited. I have probably had less sleep now than I have ever had in my life because I'm working really hard to get us very, very closely prepared for mainnet launch. And I want our community to know it first. So please join our Twitter and Discord because then you'll get early alpha on what's happening at Vana.
Okay, thank you, Art, for sharing the insights behind Vana.
Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed the questions. They've been really insightful. And if anybody has any other questions, you know where to find me with Vana on Twitter or on our Discord.